All right, so in this video, what we're going to be doing is talking about recursion and linear functions. Now, before we start working on number one, I want to talk about the different types of rules that we're going to see. First one we're going to see is the recursive rule, and then the other one is the explicit rule. This is also known as a function rule. So on recursive rules, they follow the form a sub n is equal to a sub n minus 1 plus d. Now, each of these parts represents something different. We've got a sub n represents the current term, a sub n minus 1 represents the previous term, and then d is just the difference between the two. And then explicit represents or follows the form a sub n is equal to a sub 1 plus d times n minus 1. This just means that the current term is equal to the first term plus the difference. And this is just like y equals mx plus b, which is the linear formula, right? And now in order to do an explicit function or a function rule, you need to know the first term because that's what a sub 1 is, all right? So we have an example here for Cohen. Now Cohen, it says Cohen decides to take a job with a company that sells magazine subscriptions. He is paid $20 to start, so I'm going to highlight that. It says he's $20 to start, and then earns $1.50 for each subscription he sells. We want to fill in the table below showing the amount of money, which is represented by M, Cohen earns for selling in subscriptions. And then use the process column to note what is happening in each line. So we've got a table here. Okay, and it's asking us, N represents subscriptions sold, so 0 magazines sold, 1 magazine, 2 magazines, 3, 4. And then the process, that's where our formula is going to be. And then M sub N, that equals the amount of money that he earns, right? So over in the first column, we've got N, so 0 subscriptions, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Now, for the process, well, we know that he makes $20 to start, right? So we're going to say that he starts with $20, and then he earns $1.50 for every subscription sold. So N represents subscription. So if we have 0 subscriptions, we would put 0 in for N. So this would be $1.50 times 0, which would be 0. So he'd just have $20 to start. Then if you have if he sold 1 subscription, we'd have still the $20 to start plus $1.50 times 1, right? And so that would be $21.50. And we just keep going down the list. So we have 20 plus $1.50 times 2. That's going to give us $23. And then 20 plus $1.50 times 3, which gives us $24.50. And then 20 plus $1.50 times 4, which gives us 26. So every time he sells a new subscription, he's making another $1.50. Now for a recursive rule, number 2 says write a recursive rule for the amount of money Cohen can earn selling magazine subscriptions. So we're going to be using this red one right here. So current term is equal to previous term plus the difference. Now I'm going to write it in the form of the recursive rule, right? So we've got current term is equal to M sub N plus $1.50. Now, N, he can't sell less than 0, right? So N has to equal 0, 1, 2, 3, etc., right? And also with a recursive rule, we know that M sub 0 is equal to $20. Okay? And that's it. We just had to write this rule and then state this info right here. Now for number 3, it says write an explicit function for the nth term where the sequence describing the amount of money Cohen can earn. Describe any domain restrictions in your rule, and how is this rule related to the rules you wrote in question 2? So for the the explicit function, okay, we're going to have M, which represents the amount of money he can earn. He starts with $20, right? And then he earns $1.50 for every magazine he sells. Now we know, again, N has to be greater than or equal to 0, right? He can't sell less than 0 subscriptions. So I'm going to write that out. I'm just going to say domain, which is represented by N, must be positive. And the reason is because you can't sell less than 0 subscriptions, right? Now, for number 4, it says, how much does Cohen earn if he sells 100 magazine subscriptions? Which rule did you use to answer this question, and why did you choose that rule? So we know that of the two variables, N and M, we know he sells 100 subscriptions, right? But we don't know how much money he earns. That's what we're trying to find. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use the explicit rule. And the reason is because I don't know what values come before 100, okay? I just know that he has 100 subscriptions sold. So I'm going to say money, M, is equal to $20 to start plus $1.50 for every subscription he sells. And we know that he sold 100 subscriptions, so I'm just going to put 100 right there. So if I calculate this, I should get M is equal to $170. And now it asks, which rule did we use and why? Well, I used explicit because we don't know any values before 100. And it's easier. It was easy just because all I had to do was plug in 100 and then multiply it out. Now for number 5, it says Cohen is trying to earn enough money to buy a new MP3 player. We know he needs $225 to cover the cost and tax on the MP3 player. So this $225, that's the amount of money that we need, right? So M is equal to $225. Then it says, how many magazine subscriptions does Cohen need to sell to buy his new MP3 player? And justify your answer. Which rule did you choose to answer the question, and why did you choose that rule? So at the very beginning, I'm going to state what I know. I know that M is equal to $225. But I don't know how many subscriptions he sold, right? So again, I'm going to use the rule M is equal to $20 plus $1.50 for every subscription. And I'm just going to plug in 225 is equal to 20 plus 1.5 N. So I'm going to subtract 20 from 225. And so I'm going to get 205 is equal to 1.5 n divided by 1.5. So n is equal to 136.6 repeating, okay? And whenever you have a fraction of a subscription, you have to round it, right? So we're gonna round up on this value. So n must equal 137 subscriptions. Now it says your phone service allows you to add international long distance to your phone. The cost is a $5 flat fee, so I'm going to highlight that. Anytime you have info on a word problem like this, you always want to highlight it. So $5 flat fee each month and 3 cents a minute for calls made. Write a recursive rule describing your monthly cost for international calls, then write a function rule, also known as an explicit rule, for the in minutes of calls made each month. So I've got a recursive rule and an explicit rule I have to make, right? Well, I just want to list out, if I have no calls or no minutes spent that month, right? Then I'm still going to spend $5 because it's a flat dollar fee. If I have 1 minute of calls, it's $5 and then 3 cents for that minute. And then 2 minutes called, it would be $5.06. $5.09 for 3 minutes, so on and so forth, right? So for the recursive rule, I'm just going to put R for recursive. I'm going to have A sub n plus 1, so the current or the future terms is equal to the current term plus 3 cents. Now n has to be greater than or equal to 0, and our starting amount, A sub 0, is equal to $5, right? Now for the explicit rule, we have A is equal to $5 plus 3 cents for every minute, where n is greater than or equal to 0, because you can't have less than 0 minutes. And then the last one, it says, think of a situation that can be described by a linear function. Model the situation using a recursive rule and a function rule, okay? So write the question, write a question that is better answered using the recursive rule and give the solution. So your answers are going to vary, right? It just depends on what kind of situation you think of. But as an example, I'm going to say, starting with $10 and saving $2 a week. So you're going to save, the first week you have your $10 plus your $2 saved. Then the next week you're going to have $14, and then $16, then $18, then so on, right? So a recursive rule, you're going to have A sub n is equal to A sub n minus 1 plus 2, where n has to be greater than or equal to 0, and our starting amount, A sub 0, is equal to 10. So our current term is equal to the previous term plus $2. Then our explicit rule, we're going to have A sub n is equal to $10, which is our starting amount, plus $2 every week, n, where n is greater than or equal to 0.